Welcome to Peak, a growth sport production that explores the power of culture on organizational performance. Music by The Edge. For show notes and more information, visit our website at growth-sport.com. Now here are your hosts, Mary Claire and Dr. Brian.
Welcome, I'm Mary Claire, and welcome back to Peak, the official Growth Sport podcast. Brian, it's a pleasure as always.
So good to be here.
All right, a couple questions to kick off our discussion with Dr. Brian today. So for one, how do you hold your team accountable? And for what are you holding them accountable? So in this episode, we're going to reframe accountability in a way that drives engagement and ownership and passion for what you're trying to accomplish in your organization. We'll walk through what accountability really is, how to create it, what results it drives, and how it connects to the sport model. So Brian, let's do this.
Fantastic. I'm excited.
All right, so Brian, let's just level set here. In some ways, I feel like accountability is a little bit of a dirty word, depending on what organization you're in. So tell us, what is accountability?
I think we should start, first of all, by recognizing that accountability is the flip side of the defensiveness topic that we have just been addressing over the last couple of episodes. If people in your organization are defensive, remember that's a survival mechanism. They're putting up walls. They're trying to protect themselves. They're trying to put themselves in a place where bad things won't happen to them. And accountability is a very vulnerable thing if done well, because it exposes us. And so it's hard to want to be accountable. But ironically and counterintuitively, if we do accountability well, and we get the outcomes that we really should get for accountability, it will reduce defensiveness, not increase defensiveness. And there's some key things to think about with respect to accountability and how it helps that happen. So maybe we should define a couple of those terms so that we can better understand exactly what we're talking about when we say accountability.
Let's do that. Is this where we're getting into kind of accountability that's put on you versus one that you receive or accept?
Right.
So, all right, let's break that down because I found that very helpful.
If you think about the way that most organizations do accountability today, you get a boss or a leader who will bring a team member, a subordinate, in for a regular checkup. Let's call it a checkup. Now, when I say regular, in some cases it's annual, some cases it's biannual, maybe it's quarterly. As you and I both know, it's very rare to find an organization that does this more than quarterly. But the idea is that you bring them in and you basically sit down and say, how are things going? What kind of progress are you making against your goals? What's working? What's not working? Oftentimes, these are driven by correction opportunities where the supervisor, the boss, wants to give corrective advice or input. If something isn't working well or something needs to be fixed, we have these kinds of meetings. So because that's the case, most team members don't love these. I mean, if the boss calls you in and you have an accountability meeting, it's not usually a positive meeting, or it's a nothing meeting. In other words, you're either going to go in and no value is going to come out of it, or you're going to go in and it's going to be pretty negative in terms of what the boss has for input. It's pretty rare that you hear somebody say, wow, I'm so excited for my accountability meeting with my supervisor. I really look forward to these. I really get great advice or guidance or direction or input that really helps me. In fact, I think in 30 plus, 40 plus years of doing this, I don't think I've ever heard that one time. So, that just goes to show you how difficult these things can be. If you take accountability and you say, what are we really trying to accomplish here? What we're trying to accomplish is we really want to get to the objectives that we've set, either for ourselves individually or for an organization. And we want people to be transparent about what they're doing to get those things done. That's what accountability is trying to accomplish. But we go about it all wrong. Either, we use it as this kind of disabusing feedback session, or, we're heaping tasks and things upon this team member to do that we want done, that we think are the right things to do, right? So if you and I are having this meeting and you're my boss and I'm sitting there and you're saying to me, Brian, I want you to do this, 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 and this. Now go do that. What we've recognized is that those are really your objectives. They're really your insights and your initiatives. They're not mine. So I don't own them. And so I go off and I'm like, I got to do this for Mary Claire and I got to try to make this happen to make her happy. I don't know that I believe in them or don't believe in them, but they're just not mine. In this case, the first thing we need to recognize is that true accountability can only happen for the things I own. If I don't own them, I can't be accountable for them. All I can do is report back on someone else's accountability.
So this gets back to step one in accountability, and we'll get to the model later, but I can't help but say is gaining strategic alignment and engaging people on that process of
Correct.
understanding who we are, what we're doing, how we're going to go do it.
Yep.
Okay, that's helpful. All right, so I kind of transitioned us into the setup, accidentally, that is, of how do we get accountability? So part of it, ultimately good accountability creates engagement, it creates ownership, and it creates a passion because we're all oriented towards in the same direction, solving the same problems, shooting for the same stars, so to speak. Let's talk about how we get it.
Yeah. So, I mean, think of this difference, which I think is really powerful. If in the first example, I sit down with you and you say, here's everything I want you to go do it, and then report back to me, and I'm accountable that way. It's hard to be passionate and engaged and excited about the things that I didn't decide to do. Now, think about it this way. What if I go into you as the leader and you say, Brian, these are our objectives. This is what we're trying to accomplish. What do you think are the right things to go do?
Yeah.
Now, notice there's two things happening here. One is you're giving me the opportunity to own whatever I decide to do, which will help my accountability around those things because I'm the one who comes up with them. And number two, you're really holding me accountable for what I'm going to give, what I'm going to input, not what the outputs are. So take this, for example, if I were a salesperson and my quota was X millions of dollars for the quarter, you could hold me accountable to the quota. That's one way to do it. There's a lot of things in there I don't have control over, but there are a lot of inputs I do have control over. How often do I make presentations? How often do I deliver the close? How often do I practice? How often do I, make phone calls? How often do I fill in the blank for the inputs? Those are much easier to hold me accountable for. And especially if you've asked me what I need to do and I tell you, wow, to get to my quota this quarter, I'm going to need to make 60 presentations, which means I've got to make 300 phone calls, which means I've got to send out, 35 proposals. I mean, whatever the numbers are, those are things I have control over that I can do. And then once I agree to do them, now the next time we get together, however often that is, and you'll see later that we think that that's very much more often than most people think. But but that review is for me to come back and then report on what I said I would do. Now, that creates engagement, excitement, and passion around the inputs because I can do them. And that's my craft. That's what I learn how to do. That's what I practice how to do. That's how I want to get better at what I do. Now these meetings can be me saying, Mary Claire, how should I do this better? What is your experience with this? How do I get further down the path here? And it changes the relationship between the supervisor and the team member.
Yeah, I've overused this analogy, but the system allows us to sit on the same side of the table and look out and determine how are we going to get to X versus sitting on the opposite side of the table and somebody saying, how are you going to get to X?
Yeah, I love
that.
It
just shifts the dynamic, shifts the culture. That's why at the end of the day, everything we're talking about gets back to culture.
That's right.
You're reshaping the culture of an organization through these processes and these systems. Or these principles, which are executed by these processes and these systems.
And by the way, you can see how that would change defensiveness because I'm now the owner. There's no reason for me to be defensive. I'm the one who suggested everything that was going to happen.
Yeah.
I'm the one who can come back and be accountable based on what I set up would be the right process to reach the goals. So now it's disingenuous for me to be defensive at that point, because really what I'm saying is, I'm going to be defensive about what I said. I'd be defensive to myself. That doesn't make any sense. So I've changed the game. I've changed the structure of the interaction.
Well, this is a slightly off topic in that one of the things we talked about a lot is that when the sport model, somebody asked to bring a sport model in, they're always in a whirlwind.
Mm-hmm.
And having this conversation on me as if I'm working for you, coming to you and saying, here are the inputs we're going to use. We have the opportunity as a group or as a team to determine what are the priority inputs, not all the inputs we're going to do, but I get your feedback on the most important inputs. Oftentimes our teams are trying to do too much to create an outcome, and that in and of itself destroys productivity, even in the best of intentions.
Great point.
So there's a focus opportunity here when we're with this orientation, this type of conversation as well.
Great point. And to that point too, the leader can also feedback on inputs that they don't think are great inputs. I could say to you, Mary Claire, I don't love this idea that you've got to do this. Can we talk about that for a minute?
Yeah.
And it also gives you a chance to defend it if you feel like you should. Well, this is why I think it's a good idea. Oftentimes out of those discussions, you'll get an amalgam, a new thing that comes out of that, which is, oh, let's do it, but let's change it a little this way. You get innovative inputs that actually drive different outcomes because you had a chance, to your point, being on the same side of the table, to think about how you get this done in a way that you've never been able to do it before.
Yep. Yeah. You're having conversations that haven't been had before. So,
right.
Okay. So we know what it is. We're kind of in the middle of how do we get it. So let's talk about actually how to leverage the sport model to create this accountability. And then we'll talk about the results that you can expect from it. So we've touched on it a little bit or hinted at it, but let's dive a little bit deeper into the how.
Yeah, let's just make it really clear. We'll put it in a step-wise fashion here. So the first step is to let the person in on the strategic intent. Where are we going? What are we trying to achieve? Then say to that person, step 2, what is your part in this? What are you going to do? What are your objectives? Step 3, what are the key performance activities you're going to do every week to get there? Have them list those out. And to your point, this is an 80-20 rule. What are the 20% of things you do that are going to bring 80% of the results? Let's track those. Let's monitor those. And then really diving into the process, then let's review those every 7 days. Let's get together and go over them in a short 30-minute meeting. You said you were going to do this. What did you get done? How's your needle moving on your goal? Let's just look at those together. That way you have an opportunity to tell me what's working, what's not working. I have an opportunity to feed back to you on what I think that maybe needs to be tweaked or changed, but you still own it. It's yours to report on. And we track that every 7 days.
Well, and I think what's important in what you just said is that in that same meeting, you as a leader are having the exact same conversation with the team in terms of what you committed to. So
that's right.
That multi-directional, multi-dimensional accountability, which we've noted in many conversations, but it's a team conversation, and everybody's presenting in the way that you just recommended.
Yeah, we should unpack that because often we think of accountability as a bottom up, like I'm accountable to my boss. But really, if this is done well, to your point, everybody's accountable to everybody.
Yeah.
The leader to the team members to the team members, the team member to the leader, teams to other teams above them, teams below them.
Yeah.
It's kind of a fractal like environment where everything's a team and every team has objectives and every team has things they're going to do to reach those objectives. And we're reporting on those.
Yeah.
The whole organization is a team and then every sub team to every other team. So, and you think about how this gets back to transparency. It gets back to trust. It gets back to vulnerability. All these things we've been talking about in terms of culture that are so important. This drives that cultural outcome.
So, Brian, I think the other part of this that I found helpful, both as somebody on a team and then somebody leading a team from a transparency perspective. And it helped in the accountability world to know, where do I stand on my goal relative to where I should be at this point in our season or in the year or in the quarter? Because oftentimes we're looking at the goal from the end, at the end state. But it's hard to understand if I'm ahead or behind unless I understand where am I relative to where I should be on the trajectory towards that. And to me, that helped in the accountability. It helped me think more critically as a leader and as a teammate on what are the right inputs and getting input on the right inputs. Because guys, I'm behind by X number of dollars or X number of calls. Help me understand what I should be doing differently. Jim, what are you doing? Sally, what are you doing? And it created this idea that we're all sitting on the same side of the table and getting input from other people on my inputs, so to speak. It's important, I think, of thinking about accountability differently, structuring the goals in an appropriate way to understand, am I succeeding to date relative to where I should be?
You're actually bringing up a very important point that's often overlooked. And I love the way that you said it. How many times have we set goals? In fact, we could ask our listeners this. Yeah. You set a goal and you say, I'm going to get this done by the end of the year. And as time goes on, every now and then you think about the goal, but we don't really have a great sense of where we are relative to the goal. It's like, oh, I still have 6 more months. Great. I got plenty of time. Things are fine. It doesn't need to be done yet. And then what happens is that at the end of the period, we start cramming. When I was in college, I did this. I've got clear till the end of the semester to get this assignment done. And I didn't stage it out. I just said, I got 14 weeks, and then I still have 10 weeks, and I still have 8 weeks, and I still have 6 weeks, and I still have 4 weeks, and crap, I only have 3 weeks. And then it's, I have 2 weeks, I got 1 week, and then I'm staying up all night, and I'm trying to make this thing happen, and it's not nearly as good as it could have been. And to your point, if we connect the inputs to the outputs on a regular accountability schedule, then we get to see, is what I'm doing resulting in the thing that I want in the place I should be at that moment. So if I have the trajectory and I think, okay, I should be 30% of the way. Am I? No, I'm behind. Okay, that tells me that what I'm doing is not sufficient to keep me on track. I need to pick up the pace or change the inputs or improve the inputs, something. If I'm ahead, well, great. Maybe I can do other things or more. There's opportunities, but at least I know where I am. So that's a super important point that you bring up.
Okay, so we've talked about what it is, we talked about how to get it, and we connected that how to the sport model. And again, there are other methods by which to create this accountability. I think the principles hold, regardless of what model you're using. The principles we talked about hold and should be lived by, based on our experience.
Right.
Okay, so what results could we expect from using or leveraging or creating multi-directional accountability versus more traditional accountability?
A couple of them have already been brought up, but I want to reemphasize them. If you start, first of all, with the individual, you're going to get engagement and passion and excitement out of your people. Now, I've never talked to a leader who, if I said, hey, I can show you how to get engagement and passion and excitement out of your people, that the leader doesn't say, awesome, that is a big deal. I want that. I've never had one say, that's not important.
I'm good.
Not interested. I'm good. So that's the first thing that you're going to get. The second thing you're going to get is this transparency and vulnerability within and between teams. Because they're owning their own inputs, are going to be motivated to get the very best out of those inputs that they possibly can. So you're going to see things you probably have never seen before, like people asking each other for advice and help, practice going on among the teams, best practice sharing between the teams. And once you make transparent the inputs, these key performance activities every week, now you're going to be able to really understand what's working and not working. And then going back to our defensiveness episode, you can always solve the problem, not the person, because if the input isn't working, that's not the person's problem. That's the input's problem. And now you can solve that. So you're going to see all of these benefits that we had hoped to see: transparency improve, vulnerability go up, collaboration within and across teams, ownership and excitement. All of those things are going to change. The culture around that will change dramatically if we get accountability right.
And given that this is the process that we recommended, again, whether you use our process or another, accountability on a weekly basis is a key principle. What we've seen is if you're having this type of accountability conversation, you maintain focus on what it is you said was important at the beginning of a time frame. And that focus in and of itself drives results, let alone the process that we're running to and understanding are the inputs that we're using to drive the outcomes that we want. So you're getting ongoing focus on the things that you said important, and then as you said, you're getting that collaboration among teams to understand, are these the right inputs? So I just had to note that focus. It's something people wouldn't think about, but that ongoing focus on a weekly basis on what we said was important gives an immediate lift often to organizations as well.
I call those first order results and second order results. And to your point, just the focus itself will drive really significant first order results. And then if you stay with it and you really drive this into the DNA of the organization with respect to this accountability, this ownership and accountability individually and then across teams, you'll get second order results that take you to a whole different level.
Well, Brian, this got me fired up. So, so Brian, any final thoughts before we wind down here for our listeners?
Just one. This is something that comes from leadership. Accountability is a very difficult thing to implement because it's so counterintuitive and yet so powerful. So this is something that has to come from the leader, and the requirements that are, that you put in place with respect to who owns the inputs, how often those are reported on, how the interactions are with the way that we improve them. That has to come from leadership. So if you as a leader look at your organization and you say to yourself, this organization is not as accountable as I would like it to be, it's your fault. I don't say that meanly. It's something you can fix, but you need to take a look in the mirror and decide what you want to do about how you enable accountability in your organization.
Yeah, and I would double down on that, is having, again, been in an organization where the process was brought in, and then having brought the process into an organization, the starting with the strategic alignment naturally creates the accountability. Because if you just start holding people accountable, even if you set some goals, maybe that whole alignment process creates a level of trust
and buy-in.
Yeah, that then those weekly conversations are about what we're trying to achieve together. So I do, my final thought would be it's critical to get that strategic alignment first.
Amen.
And get the buy-in on where it is we're headed. So, well, very good, Brian. These are always fun conversations. So thanks for joining us again. And for all of you listeners, thanks for spending time with us. If you have questions, comments, ideas, needs around accountability, or any of the things we've talked about in our episodes, feel free to reach out to us on LinkedIn or visit our website, www.growth-sport.com, and contact us that way. We love chatting with folks and helping them understand how to drive peak performance in their organization. So please follow us on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. Until next time, we hope your drive towards peak performance is successful.
You've been listening to Peak, a Growth Sport production.